looks like you. Good afternoon. As my father would say, I'd like to say a few words. And today we definitely don't need one of those. Actually, there's going to be a... Sorry? Oh, I've got to speak into this thing? Oh, my word. I'm going to break into an Elvis number any second. All right, we'll put it over there. Okay, there we go. It's for the people watching. So good afternoon and welcome. Today we celebrate a wonderful man who went by many names. Cork, Paolo, Grandpa, Pops, Bird, Mr. Heald, Father, and Dad. A truly wonderful man. My mom Fizz, Kate, and myself would like to really welcome you this afternoon. And for those of you who have travelled from Plumstead, I'd like to welcome you, Chris. And those of you who have come from yonder shores, Ron, what a wonderful friend you are, having travelled all the way from Western Australia in Perth. Thank you. Sir and Andy, it means a great deal to all of us. And young Phoenix, you around, young Phoenix? There we go, yeah. Thank you, my boy, to be here to celebrate Pop's celebration of life. And to those of you who are watching from afar and are unable to be here today, thank you very much. I'd also like to really mention my dad's friend Brian, who really wanted to be here today, but due to circumstances beyond his control, he was unable to attend. I'd like to thank Ingrid and Charlene for your absolute kindness in every way. It really means a lot. You know, my dad was very clear about what he wanted. He wanted no fuss, no grand gestures, no formalities, and certainly no church. He believed something greater wasn't a place. He believed that that something was within us. It was around us. And that is life itself. And so for that, today I honor his wishes. Some of you might wonder why this has taken time. Well, the truth is, this is a little bit like a bottle of wine. Sometimes things need to settle, to breathe, and to find the correct moment. He wrote this some time back, and I'd like to just read it so that everybody knows his words. Unfortunately, my eyesight has deteriorated over the past few years, and I just need to get myself... Takai, May the 14th, 2012. To who it may concern. As the saying goes, taxation and death are the only certainties in life. Well, I have paid my taxes, and despite what others may think, I do have a shelf life. So let me set out what I wish for after I've caught the blue bus. Although I was brought up in the Christian faith, I am somewhat ambivalent about wanting a church service after I've left this planet. As far as I'm concerned, I find these funeral services to be a little more than a little hypocritical. However, since I won't be there, I leave it up to those who have to get rid of my mortal remains. Above all, keep the costs down. Get the funeral directors to pop my carcass into the cheapest of coffins available, preferably made of cardboard, and shove me up the chimney at Maitland Crematorium. Please, no headstone in some grotty graveyard next to the abattoir. I would like to think of my passing that it is something that serves as benefit to others. So if there are enough bucks left in the kitty, I would like to sponsor a seat on the promenade at Fishhook Beach. Likewise, please scatter my ashes on Fishhook Beach, where I have spent so many happy times. But please do make sure that you're standing downwind of that southeaster when you do so. Finally, if you wish to have a little ceremony of some sort to mark the occasion, I'd like a little get-together in the garden with a few drinks and tab-nabs. Come and go when you like, tell a few funny stories. And remember, you are celebrating my life that is past, and not my passing onto the hereafter. Thank you, Paul.
That was written when?
In 2012. In a few short moments, I'm going to ask my sister Kate, Ron, Christine, Phoenix, and Kai to say a few words. But before that, I would like to read a few words from Paul's other son. Now, funny things happen at funerals. It always becomes that thing of, how did that happen? Well, Paul's other son is known as Dogdale. And Dogdale's mother, Ingrid, is here today, and I can really assure all of you there was no funny business between the two of them. But I shared my dad with Dogdale, and my dad became Dale's third dad. Paul had an amazing way with words, but he also had an amazing way of making up words. And some of these words were words that had no meaning to anybody but a select few. And through the years, I acquired this word dog as I went into my later teenage years. And it was a very apt name for exactly the type of teenager that I was. But curs, too, can be cuddly things. And with me being dog, Dale became Dogdale. And here are Dale's words. Mr. Heald called me Dogdale every single time I knew it came from a place of real love, not just the kind you say or the kind you show. And Paul showed it every time. Paul was a constant in my life growing up in Cape Town. Paul drove us to school and kept driving me 3 years after Jeff had finished school. Paul taught me to drive, and in those trips from Takai to Weinberg, they were filled with conversations and lessons that have stayed with me throughout my adult life. Paul had a way of making me feel seen, capable, and understood. Paul had a warmth, a presence, and a rare ability to truly connect. I carry that with me every day in my life and my work. Paul taught me without ever calling it a lesson. He taught me that people connect and do business with those that they trust and those who genuinely care. Paul was always there. He was in the stands of my water polo games. He was behind the wheel for beach trips. He was even there for the late night pickups, and always with a smile. He was always there, making sure we were safe and had a great time. When I moved to America and got married, Paul and Jeff got on a plane and came all that way just to share my day with me. And when Paul stood up at my wedding to speak, I understood what it meant to have a relationship with a man that wasn't my father, but should have been. Paul knew that without ever having to make a mention of it. He showed up just like he always did, giving me something that I will never forget. He would not be the person I am today. He shaped me. He cared for me, and I will carry him in a special place for the rest of my life. Life is a journey, and I am one of the luckiest men in the world to have had Paul Heald in mine. So, Mr. Heald, Paul, thank you, sir. I will always hold you close with a special place in my heart. You will be in my thoughts, and today I celebrate your life. So let the birds sing today and every day in your honor and your grace. Rest peacefully, Mr. Heald. Thank you. Good dog, Dale. Beautiful. And with that, I now hand the floor to my sister Kate.
So I'm never really good at standing up in front of people and talking at occasions or any form of occasion, but I just wanted to share this moment because my dad was very special to me and so many. So I had to write it down. Unfortunately, I'm not very good with remembering words nowadays, 5 minutes apart each way. My dad would like to thank each and every one of you, his friends, his family, and those who couldn't make it today. Thank you for being here and for celebrating his life with us. As we gather today to celebrate the life of my dear dad, Paul Frederick, we honor a truly remarkable human being. He was someone who always put others before himself, generous, humble, and so many had to say, a true gentleman. Some of my most beautiful childhood memories are with you, Dad. Saturday mornings at Musenberg Pavilion, running freely on the lawns, singing, dancing, laughing. Always ending it off with the super chips and an ice cream. Those moments will live in my heart forever. You were always the first one up on a Sunday morning, taking us to Nippers. You stood at the finish line with your camera, cheering us on, saying, "Hold it, go back. That's not a proper smile. Smile for Daddy. Oh, wait, I forgot to take the photo," as so many of us know. Those little moments are treasures I will never forget. Our long road trips to Port Elizabeth were so special, with Boney M playing over and over again, all the way there and all the way back to Cape Town. Simple moments, so much love and joy. Dad, you were a great teacher. If there was one thing you truly taught me, is to be a good person, to be kind, to be loving, and to always see the good in others. There is one comfort. I know you will always be with me forever, whenever, and I feel you by my side. You are now free and at peace now, Dad. I love you, always and forever.
My wife, Christine, would like to say a few words.
Hi, everyone. was a gentleman. He was also a gentle man, proud, dignified, proper. Paul understood form. He had a precise sense of the right way to do things, from a carefully penned thank you letter on quality paper to an immaculately pressed shirt, often surprisingly daring for his generation, a flamboyant pattern or a bold print that hinted at the man beneath the quiet exterior. Yes, Paul had style and poise. He moved through the world with dignity. It was how he cast his shadow. Whenever I received a letter from him, I took time to savor his fine penmanship, often tracing my finger over the carefully formed letters. Not only was each letter, but each word was too, thoughtfully chosen, delivered with precision, and saying exactly what he intended. Paul understood the power of small things, how they could last, how they could make an impact, how they could make all the difference. And that's what made him different. Things mattered to him, but the things that matter, starting with his children. Paul was an excellent father. He followed his children's lives with pride and precision, noting and preserving their achievements, their milestones. He ensured they always knew just how proud he was of them. He recorded their lives meticulously through carefully tended photo albums, honoring their place in his life and in the He made his children feel loved, valued, and worthy. And I will always love him for that. History also mattered to Paul. Perhaps his early exposure to war left him searching for understanding. He examined history carefully, traveling overseas to visit significant sites and to learn more each time. He made those journeys alone. To me, they felt like something sacred, something profound. I often imagined him standing quietly at each place, paying homage in his own way, honoring the lives lost, making them matter, lifting forgotten men from history and acknowledging their sacrifice and that of their families. It felt as though part of his purpose was to bring meaning to what otherwise might feel meaningless. Paul sought meaning. He and I shared a love of the English language, its words, their sound, their meaning. We laughed over clever puns and admired a well-turned phrase. We spoke about rules with words. I loved those moments. But even more, I loved sitting back, slightly surprising and not entirely known. I didn't just enjoy Paul's poems, though. I enjoyed how much he enjoyed them, how he would step briefly into the spotlight, reveling in the performance, before returning to the well-dressed, composed gentleman he was. There was humor in Paul and a quiet streak of showmanship. We often left family gatherings smiling and saying Paul was on good form, a phrase he himself might have appreciated. As Jeff said, Paul had a wonderful collection of his own inventions. And on Easter Sunday, at a sunrise service at Winmore Beach, a pair of geese flew overhead. I watched them and thought of Paul, his onken flappers onking as they flapped across the sky. It was a special moment, and it comforts me to know that Paul is on through us, through his playful inventions. His love of words continued throughout his life. At Piers, he joined a poetry group. His poems were published in the Piers Village newsletter. It always filled me with quiet pride, as it's not easy to offer your words to the world. But he did. Paul also had a mischievous side. At family breakfasts, pork sausages were regular guests, and so was his wandering fork. It would quietly slide across the table to spear a sausage from an unsuspecting child. And he didn't just pinch them, he ate them with enthusiasm to our great amusement. And on the way to meals, one of the kids would inevitably say, "I hope the sausage thief isn't coming today." But of course, he always did. And I suspect if this service had been held at Piers Village, we might have been surprised by how many people would have attended, because Paul had his own quiet way of engaging with the world, and he was loved. I imagine him exchanging words on his daily walks, in his daily life, with fellow dog walkers, cashiers, bookshop attendants, and countless others whose lives he touched in ways we'll never know. There was always more to Paul than met the eye. Still waters run deep, and Paul ran deep. So today, as we remember him, we celebrate a man of quiet dignity and careful words, of subtle mischief and deep feeling, who loved his family with a quiet, unwavering constancy. Thank you, Paul, for all of it. It was a privilege to have known you.
Thank you, Christine. Captain?
I was fairly sure I'd be unable to add anything to the words that have come before. So, I've gone back 58 years to when I joined the ship, and Paul Frederick Heald was the radio officer. And it was a very special ship. It's called the Clan Ramsay. Subsequently, the town I came from, it became that boat, which is still in the lexicon of the small town I was born in. So Frederick was a senior radio officer, quite senior for that ship. The ship was a reefer ship, built to carry cargoes, refrigerated cargoes from South Africa to Europe, most of the UK. And it had a lot of very interesting people in it who were very, very experienced and very comfortable in their abilities, and which allowed them to carry out their duties with somewhat sense of humour and without stress. And Paul was one of those. I wasn't. I was a cadet. Paul had 2.5 stripes. I didn't even have half a stripe. We were 10 years apart. But his sense of humour and the smile he always had and the humanity was so addictive. It was so I'll just give you, the ship did have a few practical jokers on it, but they weren't even in the picture. The master was Paul, and he had some beauty. I'll share a few of these with you. So, for example, Duncan, the third engineer, very nice young man, a little on the nervous side. And Paul reckoned engineers should be like they've always been, covered in grease, hot, sweaty, need to be scrubbed down after every watch, grease cans, etc. But on this ship, it was the first ship where we had bridge control. So if we moved the telegraph on the bridge, the ship full of that. This ship had been converted. And this is why people were on the ship. There were various experiments going on. So the engineer still had to be on watch, which is not the case now, but he still had to be on watch. So he would sit in a control room, air conditioned, nice comfortable swivel chair fixed to the deck so that it wouldn't move. Tea, coffee facilities, clean as, you can come out of the engine room as clean as he would go in. To Paul, so he took it personally, I think, mixed it with his, and the first person with Duncan, he was third engineer, qualified, and he did the 8 to 12 watch in the morning, 8 to 12 watch in the evening. Now the watch every hour, you would have to fill out the logbook, put in what temperature the engine's running at, or how many revs, or how much fuel it's using, or how much oil, and make a log of it. And you had all the instrumentation there. But not too arduous, just to wander around the engine room, make sure everything was okay, no leaks anywhere. And then you can come back and sit in your nice, comfortable chair and dream of the next port or whatever, and make yourself a cup of tea. And in Duncan's case, he had to have his biscuit. But Paul was a great observer. And on the bridge was a speaker. That speaker was coupled to a speaker in the engine room, except it was one way. We could switch on their speaker and listen to what was happening in the control room, but they couldn't switch on our speaker and listen to what we were doing on the bridge. So Paul would listen to this for a few days, and I thought, okay. So this is what's going down. How do you say? When he did his 9:45 inspection, he would write it all in the book, and then he would go and get his cup of tea, come back, put the tea down, sit down in a nice comfortable chair, open his biscuit, and then you could just hear, which Paul certainly could, the cup coming up, and Paul would go, and we would go, Duncan! To this massive speaker, and the tea and the biscuit would go everywhere, which worked quite well. But the real deal in it was, we did it again, totally irregularly. He could go for one day, he could go for a week, but every time he went to take that biscuit or pick up that cup of tea, you could sense what he was going through. So that was my introduction to his first practical joke. So then, all right, this one. At the end of that voyage, and Paul's smile, and it was just an amazing fellow, such a privilege. So we get to Mombasa. Now Mombasa, 58 years ago, was very much attuned to the finances of not the whole city, but one section of it, attuned to sailors who had money to spend, and beer to drink, and girls to sit on their knee, or music to dance to, all of that. So all these officers who could come off the ship, the crew, by the way, were, I can't remember whether they don't come into it. So we go ashore, and we sat in this enormous round table on basically the first bar we came to. And there were dancing girls and music and all sorts of nonsense going on. But there were 2 or 3 tables because other crews were doing the same sort of thing. We were the only British one. But we ran out of money. No beer money left. Right, who's going back to the ship? Somebody's got to go back to the ship and get some more money. We can't. So next thing, Paul goes over and chats to this other large table full of Greek sailors. And he comes back and says, I have a plan. We're going to sell the cadet. So we'll get a hold of them, throw them on the table, and they're going to come over and bid. Guess what? He got his volunteers to go straight back to the ship and get the money. Greek sailors have got a certain reputation. Part of that. But he had a plan. Paul always had a plan. Yeah. And then, homeward bound, it was Duncan's turn again. There were lots of other ones in between, but these are the ones. So Paul, unlike all the other officers of the ship, didn't actually wear a uniform. Paul wore his own uniform, which were like desert boots, the soft brown boots, chinos, and check shirts. So that if you caught somebody just going around the corner, if it's one of the officers, you couldn't tell because they're all wearing uniform, except for Paul. He wore his uniform. Except for dinner at night, he would put his actual gold braid and everything on. Otherwise, he wouldn't have got fed. So that was synonymous with whatever. So Duncan's on watch, 8 to 12. He comes off at midnight. Now, Duncan was of a nervous type, so he always locked his cabin when he went out of it. No one else ever did, but Duncan would lock the cabin. And inside, he would make sure his window, we didn't have portholes then, we had actual windows. It was dogged down really tight, and the lights would be on. So when he came back, he could unlock his door. That gave him comfort. Open the door, light. So he comes back. The door's open. There's no lights. He puts his hand around to put the light on. It's sticky. The lights go on, and there is Paul nearly out of the window, so you couldn't see his head. It was in darkness, with a shirt and and this red stuff and a knife stuck right between the shoulder blades. Duncan, now my cabin was along from that. Paul's was upstairs. So we had to cut into my cabin. We were watching this, and it was probably about 1.5 meters back, and he almost floated just straight back and thumped into the bulkhead and started sliding down it, and then he was off. He was off. So we were running up the alleyway behind him to try and stop him going up the bridge and causing a great fuss, pressing alarm bells, because it was so realistic and so designed. Paul was a maestro at it, absolute maestro. He was perfect because he picked up details. And I thought we were going to kill him. I thought he was just, that would have been it. So, yeah. Unfortunately, that was Duncan got 2 of them, but so did everyone else. I never got any, probably because I was his accomplice and I was too much onto him. So then the last one. So we arrived in the UK in Avonmouth. And in Avonmouth, we're discharging a nasty stuff called blue asbestos. There were only 2 ports in Europe would take the asbestos. One was Avonmouth and one was Antwerp. Nowhere else would take a ship with asbestos in it. I was a cadet, so I was the one who was sent up, because there was only one hatch, one hold had it. So I was always sent up to see how they were doing, how many bags of things were left, etc. None of the officers would go near it. But, so, anyway, Paul had his little blue Mini, which he brought everywhere with him, because radio officers were not allowed to transmit or receive messages in port. Because your license finished as you came into port. So radio officers had a lot of time off to do maintenance, repairs, but a new ship, everything's good. Paul looked after everything and knew it. So he popped down and picked up his car, and we went to all sorts of pubs all over the place. The only thing was Paul would never drive at night because his eyesight, he preferred not to. I, with no license at all, did all the night driving, drinking just as much as him, but that was just so. And this little blue car, whenever we moved from port to port, he'd go and get it and bring it up. And we'd run around and try the pubs, like the small one in Somerset. We'd go in there, and it goes just from really noisy to totally silent. So we walk up to the bar. The barman cross-examines Paul. Where you be from? And all of this. This is before we even get a chance to order a beer. Anyway, it works out that we're in Avonmouth, we're on a ship. They be from ship's officers, not be from a city. And that was it. The noise was again, and Paul was in, chatting to them all and making a new batch of friends that they'd never see again. Anyway, we get up to Glasgow, and he has this idea, look, all your mates come from this area, so let's invite them down for a few drinks. Yeah, great idea. Lovely. Yep, great idea. So the few drinks, every 8 days, Her Majesty's government's customs officers would open the bond, our bond, and give us out 1 bottle of spirits for each person on board, if that's what you wanted. The crew, which was more than half the total complement on board, weren't allowed to have any spirits. So if we had 35 people on board and there was 12 officers, that left 23 bottles. Okay, you'd have to pay for them, but they cost next to nothing then. So you'd have these 23 extra bottles. Well, a few 8 days went past, so when we arrived in Glasgow, we were just absolutely, we could have almost floated the ship, the number of bottles we had. So we invite them down. We supply half-pint mugs, beer mugs, water, because people like water with a whiskey, nothing else. Nothing else, that's it. And lock the door. Fortunately, we had a toilet. And by probably, and music, of course, bring music. After about 2 or 3 hours, there were people on their hands and knees begging to be let out. But they couldn't find the door, they couldn't find how to open it, and we just kept them in there. And just one for the road, just one for the road. And they were drinking whiskey and brandy and rum, and I think by the end they didn't even know what they were drinking. They were just, if we have one more, can we get out? Yeah, so we eventually let them out, and we had to call some taxis. But we had to actually bribe the taxi drivers to take these. They were all nicely dressed, but they weren't looking too good. And one guy, he managed to get the taxi driver out of his car. He jumped in because he reckoned the taxi driver was going to take him the long way round, up to the end of the wharf, across and down. He reckoned it'd be much better going off straight across the wharf. You know, the 5 meters down to the water, 10 meters of water underneath that, 200 meters across and up again. With all the mates in the back going, yeah, let's do this. Taxi drivers. Anyway, that was Paul. That was my first voyage with him, my only voyage. Shortly after that, he was promoted to the technical communications manager, etc. So we never actually sailed again together. But what a man. What an absolute man. And we've had that friendship ever since. And his family have just accepted me. You're part of our family, we're part of your family. I can't follow the words, because he was such a great orator, and he certainly passed it on to his son, and his daughter-in-law has the same ability. But anyway, that's my little bit for you for Paul, and just maybe another part of Paul, because we all know different Pauls. But there's one thing: everybody deserves a Paul in their life, but virtually none of us will ever have one. We're very fortunate, very fortunate. Thank you.
Ron, thank you for your humorous stories and beautiful words. And I'm going to ask Kai to come and say some words.
Dearest Fizz, Jeff and Kate, and all the friends who are here, I'm really very touched with what I've heard from everybody who's said something. I think, Kate, your command of English language is so phenomenal that I'm in awe. And if you got that from your dad, because he's obviously very linguistically capable, all I can say, it really shines through. I'd like to see you, Jeff, with the same joie de vivre, joy of life as your father had. I haven't met you long enough to actually see that, but I'm sure you must have it. It's a wonderful quality that Paul has. But I'm going to tell you something a little different, in that I, unlike most of you, had the pleasure of working with Paul for over 30 years. I remember Paul as being the person who, in 1975, came into the company having been a radio officer. I didn't realize a senior radio officer, but I knew there was a technical expertise that he had. And he came into the company having been interviewed by the managing director of the company at the time, Julian Lloyd. I was 29 at the time. Paul was 9 years older. And all I can say, from the moment that I met him, he impressed me. He was a very special person, and I'm going to try and explain this. We had a company then which was focused on selling marine electronic equipment, which is the reason why Paul was chosen to head the sales team. He obviously had the technical ability to work the radios. At that stage, we sold echo sounders, radios, radars, all equipment with which he was very familiar. It was ideal. Even then, the equipment was quite sophisticated. And we needed to have somebody to actually sell this equipment to a customer. Mostly, the customer didn't even know why he needed it. So the question was, how do you actually get a customer to buy something? And this is one of the qualities that Paul had in his job, and he brought forward all the time. He was able to explain complex things in a very simple way. It made a huge difference to everybody in the company and to his customers to have somebody who would explain something which is quite complex in a simple way. That made him a super salesman. And that was important for our young company at the time. He was always keen to improve his own skills. I don't know, Fizz, if you remember that there was a time that he went to do the Dale Carnegie course. And I listened to him, and I was surprised that somebody went to do a sales course. Well, he so convinced me of the virtues of this course that I then went and did the Dale Carnegie course as well. And I can honestly say I do not regret having done that. It's helped me throughout my life. It's been said several times from here, where I'm standing, that he was a gentleman. Well, he was, in fact, a gentleman. Very gentle, very sincere, and everybody with whom he had contact was impressed by his sincerity, honesty, and his very straight up and down style. We didn't see or he did not allude whilst I was there. David, can you maybe say this? Did he play these jokes on the staff that you are aware of?
He had a great sense of humor, Paul, did he?
So obviously I was not party of that, but
Do not disclose.
No, they were mostly about you, so
that's why I didn't hear. Right. So he was genuinely polite. He was very careful in what he wrote and how he wrote it. His calligraphy, how he actually managed to write those words so carefully. It almost came effortlessly out of his writing. But you knew this was a lot of thought that went into each letter of the calligraphy. His staff could rely on him, on his word, his ability to listen, and for his support. That made him extremely popular with the staff. Not only staff, but also the agents for whom he was responsible, and our suppliers. So our relationships absolutely improved with everybody all round. It was a great time, and the company did extremely well. under his leadership, the company grew to become the foremost supplier in marine equipment. It was a wonderful time. But there's one thing that I need to mention, which hasn't been alluded to, is his ability to choose not only his friends, but the staff with whom he works with. When I wrote these few words here, I had written a paragraph about David Maitland. I couldn't believe it when I came into this room here. There he was, standing in front of me, and I didn't recognize him because of the beard that he has. Yeah, but I tell you, David and Todd, who is the other person he hired, they were such good people for us in the company. When David left, unfortunately, to go to Australia, I was very upset, and I thought he really had all that was needed. But Todd stayed, and we were very happy that he built the company up in a similar way. But what was unusual is that Paul not only trained David and Todd, but when Todd was, in his opinion, obviously capable of doing what had to be done, he then resigned. Not Todd, but Paul did. Paul resigned. I think, Fizz, you will know this, when he retired. I think he retired somewhere around about 60, and he carried on working. Right? So not only did he train the person who succeeded him, but he actually handed over the reins, and he stayed on in the company in his position as director. So the challenge was, how can we make sure that he doesn't get bored? And it wasn't difficult, because he was an incredibly good trainer of people. So what we did, were you still there, David, when we did it?
Just left him.
You just left him.
But he was an incredible trainer.
He was a good trainer, and the result was that everybody who walked through our front door was trained in every aspect of the company, how it actually functioned, who was what, and what you had to know about the technicalities of the equipment. The result was that everybody who was with us got was it 2 stripes? I'm not sure that you said, but he certainly got his stripes as training, and if they ever went to any other position in a company in the marine industry, if they could say that they'd worked with Paul, it was really a feather in one's cap to be able to say that. He was incredibly successful at training. We obviously shared some highs and lows together, but specifically the highs were when we introduced a piece of equipment, new piece of equipment, which had been manufactured in Japan, and we'd actually get the first sale. That first sale was a joy for everybody. The first sale is always the most difficult sale, but he managed. Sometimes he would relate how a staff member would explain their problem to him, and then he would also explain what he did to comfort them. The relationship that he had with the staff was simply unbelievable. And I remember, Fizz, you may have been present at one stage, when he said to me, Kai, I don't know how it is that you chose me to run the company. And I said, it's obvious, Paul, you were the best man. You had the relationships, and it's all about relationships. And I'm sure that is something that you took with you when you went to Australia. It's all about relationships. So all I can say is, Paul, it's been a great privilege for me to have worked with you for so many years and to have seen you succeed, which in those times were quite difficult. You may not realize it, but we had sanctions applied to South Africa. And in times of sanctions, the one thing was to try and actually sell the equipment. The other thing was to try and get it, because it wasn't always straightforward to get the equipment. But he never was negative about anything. He was always positive. He made everybody that he was working with positive, and it was a joy to be with him. I thank you, Paul, for being a good friend and having done such a great job with me. Thank you very much.
Kai, thank you for those wonderful words. Now I'm going to ask the star of the show, his grandson Phoenix, to come and say a couple of words.
So, I mean, today is really about celebrating Grandpa and who he was to all of us. And there's so many things I could say about him. But there's two parts that really stick with me that I remember from growing up. And the first one was his love of history and the immense knowledge that he had, and how he could answer any question I ever had for him and make it into a grand story. And the second was his passion for photography and video, where at family gatherings I remember him with a camera in his hands, making sure to document everything. He was a storyteller, a quiet historian of our family. Through all the videos he made, he captured moments we might have otherwise forgotten. Birthdays and holidays that became special because he preserved them. And because of him, we don't just have memories. We can see them, hear them, and relive them. And he's given us such a beautiful and rare gift. In his own way, he made sure our family's story and history would never be lost. And although we celebrate his life today, his presence will never truly leave us. He lives on in our hearts and in our own stories, and in every memory of him that we hold close. Thank you.
Thank you, Phoenix. And so, as his son, I stand here with not enough words. I could speak for days about my pa. So instead, I'm going to read a poem. And it's written by a lady by the name of Mary Elizabeth Fry. Do not stand at my grave and weep. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamonds that glint on the snow. I am the sunlight on the ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift, uplifting rush of quiet birds circling in flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I did not die. And so with that, I close. Thank you, Dad. And as you would say, salams. And so the one thing I do know is that Paul would certainly want everybody to be merry. So help yourself to food. There are beautiful wines, there are beers, there's tea, there's coffee, there's fruit juices. And as in my Father's words, stay as long or as short as you so wish. But most of all, thank you for coming today. Thank you. Oh, wait, we have,
Grace and Ella? No.
no?
You okay?
All right.
Okay. Ella?
Hello everybody, you may know me as Ella. So the reason I'm doing this speech is because we lost someone special, really special. A grandpa, a role model, and mostly importantly, a dad. And you know, whenever I saw my grandpa, he would always make sure he shaved, put deodorant on, and dressed up really nicely.
So he did.
I will forever miss my grandpa. My darling, you're resting now. Thank you.
And then I've just got the candles behind us. So if you'd like to light a candle and set an intention when you leave, you're welcome to.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ja, ja, ja. Like spicy.